Thank you for coming here today. My name is Joe Coulson, and my seminar topic is iconic ball jars. It will consist of a mix of company history highlights, some of the out-of-ordinary ball jars that have a story, and a few ball-related items that support the stories. I have a little bit about me. I have volunteered as the secretary and newsletter editor for the Midwest Antique Fruit Jar and Bottle Club for the last 20 years. My special interest in ball jars comes from the fact that I was born and raised in Muncie and have experienced the lasting impact of the ball company in different ways. I received a bachelor's degree in computer science from Ball State University in 1988 and a master's degree in data science from there in 2023. I've always been a collector of some kind. My interest in collecting ball jars developed and became my full-time hobby when I discovered this club in 2003. It has been a lot of fun and adventures ever since. In fact, a ball jar collecting friend was responsible for me being introduced to my wonderful wife, Jennifer. Be careful what you pursue in this hobby, you just might find it. I brought it's down here on the chairs, the ball timeline poster from 1976 as a backdrop for this presentation. It was created at a special moment in time when the company was still growing their glass container and home canning business. The company had just opened their new headquarters building on High Street. It wasn't at the factory, it was actually downtown in Muncie. The United States was experiencing its bicentennial anniversary. Now we're experiencing another U.S. Anniversary this year in 2026, 250 years. Historical nostalgia was at an all-time high in 1976 when this poster was created. And it's wonderful because it has so much of the history illustrated with pictures and the timeline and the key facts and dates when things happened with the company from its beginning up to 1976. Let's start at the front of the timeline and jump into a story about Ball Brothers' beginnings in Buffalo, New York. George Ball, the uncle of the Ball brothers, was a Baptist preacher in Buffalo, New York. He placed Ed Ball as an apprentice with A.W. Aldrich. Mr. Aldrich was a member of George's church, and he owned a company that manufactured copper tea kettles and wood-jacketed oil cans. After a few weeks, Mr. Aldrich offered the oil can division to Ed for $200. Uncle George loaned them the money. Ed brought Frank in to help. Frank turned out to be a master salesman. After a month, the Hanover Street factory caught fire. They were insured. They rebuilt at 55 Main Street. The brothers improved on the wood-jacketed oil can patents and no longer had to pay any royalties to Mr. Aldrich. They expanded into tin cans and then glass-bodied oil cans. The tin cans corroded and glass-bodied oil cans would be better. Shown in this display is an early Ball Brothers price booklet. The booklet shows the items that were for sale at this time in history. According to F.C. Ball's memoirs, the story is told that a group of Canadian glassblowers talked the brothers into setting up a small glass furnace with the idea of blowing the bodies for their glass oil cans. Initially, they contracted for the glass bodies. This became a very successful product. The Ball brothers obtained U.S. design patent number 13806 for their own diamond oil can in 1883. This was a glass-bodied oil can and was produced in sizes of 1/2, 1, and 2 gallons. The Ball brothers started work in 1885 on a new glass works on Porter Street in eastern Buffalo. They knew that it would be more profitable to make their own and there would be no shipping breakage. And so here's an example of the diamond oil can. This is the 1 gallon size, and that was the most common size found at homes in that time period. And this is the 1/2 gallon size, same design. And this is another one, 1 gallon size, but it says pearl on it. This is another one that Ball made at that time, close to that time. And this is From the can department price list, special goods manufactured by Ball Brothers of Buffalo, New York on 10 through 32 Porter Street. This is from the earliest days, and it shows all the things they were making. The cans and the pearls mentioned in here as well. And they made a variety of other things in tin stampware. Kind of get goosebumps holding this, because this is like the beginning. And this is what they were doing at that time in Buffalo, New York. At this point, the Ball brothers decided to expand into making fruit jars, since they had excess capacity of glass at their new glass works. In the late 1870s, John L. Mason's patents fell under control of the Consolidated Fruit Jar Company. With the expiration of Mason's patent in 1879, other competitors quickly joined in, adding their own logos and marks. You could say that the Ball brothers were at the right place at the right time for getting into the fruit jar business. It is possible that their first fruit jar was the Ball BBG MCO monogram fruit jar. In 1975, there was only one example of this jar known. Now maybe there are 10 or so. The first reported example of this jar was donated to the Ball Museum, which eventually was transferred to Minnetrista here in Muncie. All known examples are quartz. Note that the body shape of this jar is very different. That's another reason to believe it was probably one of the earliest ones. Because then you can see the styles later that was most common in the industry for other companies. And also note that it has the improved style closure, the band and the glass screw lid. Screw band and glass top seal lid. That was the patent that expired that they could allow them to use this style of jar. During the years of approximately 1884 to 1886, they produced the BBGM Co monogram jars. There is a story in F.C. Ball's memoirs about how they discovered what was causing the amber color in some of their glass batches. And I'd like to read that story. After we had been running a short time, their first glass operation, the glass turned amber color. The master teaser declared Brian had doctored the batch. A dispute arose that ended by the teaser chasing Brian around the furnace with a red-hot iron, threatening to run it through him. After performance of this sort had been going on for some time, Brian told Ed he could tell what made the glass amber if he would promise not to tell the teaser. Of course, Ed promised. Those were his two employees. And was told the blast was too strong and was blowing the coal over into the melting tank. It is a well-known fact, we have learned later, that coal will color glass amber. In fact, coal is used to make amber glass. Carbon. Ed cautiously told the teaser that he was going to try an experiment. The draft to the furnace was supplied by means of a blower and pipe connection. Ed had a damper placed in the pipe, and when the coal was shoveled into the furnace, the damper was closed, preventing the wind from blowing the coal into the glass. In a short time, the glass cleared up, the amber color disappeared. The teaser never admitted that the coal had colored the glass, but he was careful to reduce the blast or wind pressure when coal was shoveled into the furnace. So that's, and to go with that, black smoke, this is kind of, I thought about this, what black smoke, could that really happen? You think smoke affecting the glass batch, the way the furnace was designed back then. Black smoke is primarily composed of tiny unburned carbon particles, soot, resulting from incomplete combustion, meaning there wasn't enough oxygen for the fuel to burn fully into carbon dioxide and water. instead forming solid carbon that appears black. This soot, along with other carbon-rich hydrocarbons, gives smoke its dark, opaque appearance. And carbon does cause the amber color. So that kind of leads into the amber half-gallon Ball Brothers Glass Manufacturing Company monogram jar. Only 5 examples of this jar are known in the amber color. 3 are half gallons and 2 are quarts. One of the quarts is in the Minnetrista Museum here in Muncie, and the other examples are privately held. And some people think this is the holy grail of ball jars. At least I do. And along with that time period, the Buffalo time period, we have the other monogram jars, ball monogram jars. And the midget pint. This one I borrowed from Jeff Klingler. He has a wonderful example of the ball band, which you need to kind of study those to find out if it's ball or not. And he's got a really nice milk glass lid on this one. Forgot to show our other audience, potential audience, that this actually works. The crowd's helping me with sound effects. I don't have any sound effects, so that's very helpful. It should be noted that there are several different monogram variations. You'll see there's very different variations. There are also many variations of the embossing on the glass top seal lids for these jars. Most of the lids are found in aqua, clear, olive green, and there are even milk glass examples, which we have up here. Up until this point in history, all of the ball jars were the Mace's Improved style, as we mentioned, which is the glass top seal lid and that metal screw band. During the early 1880s, only the Consolidated Jar Company and Hero Glassworks were allowed to manufacture lined metal screw caps, the other style, because they owned the patents at that time. Other companies, including Ball Brothers, had to wait until the Boyd patent was invalidated in 1886. And the Boyd patent's for the liner inside the metal cap. The Ball Brothers seized this opportunity, that patent expiration, as a business opportunity to expand their offerings. At this point in time, the porcelain monogrammed jars would have appeared on the scene. The embossing on the jar indicated that the closure was a lined metal screw cap. The porcelain or milk glass lining would help protect the food contents from coming in contact with the metal lid. These jars were made for a short time after the Boyd patent invalidation and before the plant fire of 1886, although it is not fully known the extent of damage that the 1886 fire caused. This also possibly explains why the original metal screw caps for this jar are so hard to find, the plant fire. The porcelain BBGM co-lined jars are found in midget pint, quart, and half-gallon sizes. Aqua's examples are scarce, and clear examples are rare. The clear half-gallon shown here was once part of the Phil Robinson Museum here in Muncie, and purchased through the North American Glass Auctions. The top of the cap is embossed porcelain line cap for mason fruit jars. The lining is embossed Ball Brothers Glass Manufacturing Company, Buffalo, New York. Variations are known, and the caps are found with and without vertical lugs. And I do have one of those caps on here, so you can look at that later. And this is another one I borrowed from Jeff's collection, Jeff Klingler. He's here somewhere. That's the midget pint. Now we come to another big step in the timeline, the early Muncie, Indiana period from 1888 to 1899. With the discovery of abundant natural gas in the Midwest, many companies were looking to expand or locate here for cheap fuel. The Ball brothers decided on Muncie for their new glass factory. The first glass production began on March 1st, 1888. On that first day, they made lamp chimneys and oil container bodies. But it wasn't long before they were making fruit jars too. The Ball brothers at this time period were making what collectors call generic Mason's patent November 30th, 1858 fruit jars during their first few years in Muncie. This means that there was no additional embossing on the jars. And after a lot of study of these, people determined which ones, the shapes, you have to know the glass characteristics. Some of these they've identified for sure as Ball made, and there's other ones that aren't. And these, again, are ground mouth jars. And this one's a half gallon. And this one's a quart. It's got reversed ends. Kind of hard to cut molds backwards. You were doing things, engraving things backwards to get it to appear correctly on the glass. This jar also has a circular slug plate on the back. And the idea is that molds were reused that had the monogram on them. And I've compared that exactly is the right size to cover that BBG&Co monogram. At some point, and I just wanted to add too, that this paper item from my collection, dated April 18th, 1895, has a wonderful, and it's a photograph, not a hand illustration, of original boxes of Ball Brothers fruit jars, and they're generic Mason's patent 1858 jars. There's no Ball, there's no other wording on there. At some point in these early Muncie years, they started adding the company name to the jars. Machine molds were acquired from other companies and the Ball name was added. You can find these jars with block letters with embossing such as Ball, the Ball jar, and so on. You can also find these jars with script letters added. There is a great amount of variety in jars from this time period. The company was successful and growing fast. So to represent this time period, the early glass mouth blown jars. I picked some Christmas Masons, which, man, somebody had to really work to cut that mold. There's a lot of fine detail to those. And this one's kind of getting towards that all blue color, a deeper aqua. And it does have the crescent moon and star cap on it, which was how these are commonly found. Another nice one from the Jeff Klingler collection. This was SCA. SCA is really tough to find in the Christmas Masons. And lastly, to illustrate the point, I have to let our cameraman see these. The last example of this has the Ball jar on the back of the Christmas Mason. And that illustrates the point Ball was starting to add their name to jars they got from elsewhere. And to go with this same time period, you notice that the Christmas Masons have the 58 only at the bottom of them, which this next jar kind of continues that story. This jar has Mason's patent November 30th and just 58 at the bottom. Has has the blowover still intact. That's the way the process of making these jars back then. You had the honey rod, and they had a blowover after they blew the glass into the mold, and there was some that was outside the mold. They broke that off, and then they ground that down. This jar was dug at the site of the Colorado City Glass Works. I have newspaper clippings that discuss Ball Brothers' operations and connection with the Colorado City Glass Works that I obtained from Diane Bartz at Minnetrista. Mary Harper also forwarded to me some general history she found on the Colorado City Glass Works. This is a significant finding in that it ties Ball to the 58 only embossed jars, which we had suspected anyway, through circumstantial evidence of finding them with caps, etc. One of the last of the mouth-blown jars would have been the Ball patent applied for. The story behind this jar is that Ball was trying to get into the popular lightning-style closure jar market. Apparently, they did not feel comfortable that they could avoid the existing patent protection on the lightning-style jars. And it's tough to find these original lids. That's another thing to kind of look out for, whether it's original repo. Repos are good because they complete the jar, but you kind of want to know which it is by studying the differences. And there again, these are mouth-blown jars. Our next major step in the timeline is the early glass machine era from 1894 to 1910. Ball bought the Arbogast patent in 1890. This was for a semi-automatic glass blowing machine. They bought other patents and did their own experimenting in order to develop a machine that could reliably make fruit jars faster and cheaper and uniform quality. They came up with the FC Ball machine, and then later the Ball Bingham machine, and continued to make improvements. And so I've got a representation of that. This one's in a nice green color. It's a ball with the 3L logo and improved. The improved, at this point in time, not only referred for this particular jar to the glass top seal lid and screw band, but it also referred to the fact that they're starting to make these on machines, which was an improvement in the quality of the jars. And these early machine-made jars, there's a ton of variety. This one says it's a 4-liner, kind of a ball lingo, for collecting lingo, for how many lines of embossing are on here. There's 3, 4, 5, how they spread out the wording. But this one's a Ball 3L logo, improved Mason's packed, not patented, that's unusual, 1858. But there's a ton of variety of these. It's fun to collect. And remember, we're still in the kind of that early machine era. Other representations include a jar they made on contract for a company. Notice that this is the same shape and style as a Ball improved jar, like I just showed you, the green one from this time period. And there's a limited number of these out there. They're scarce, not rare, but scarce, because they were made in a small batch, for this particular company, Happer Extract and Perfume Company. Now, obviously, this jar wasn't filled with perfume. It was actually some type of syrup extract, so the first part of their company name and business. And going along the theme, because kind of the theme here is iconic ball jars, picking and choosing out of all the possible ones. We have the 3L logo machine-made ball mason that's upside down. These are tough to find. They were still thought to believe to have been coffee dispenser jars for the wall coffee grinders of the time period. I held that one up or not. But now we'll get to another fun set. Okay, remember, we're in the early machine time, glass blowing machines period. There were several plant fires during this time period. The newspapers of the day mentioned labor unrest due to glass blowing machines about to replace workers. A very significant plant fire occurred in May of 1898, destroying a significant amount of their warehouse. Burnt wooden shipping boxes, along with the damaged fruit jars, were reused in the glass cullet to make new jars. The carbon from the burnt box material would have produced the amber color in the new glass batches. And there's some good color and ball standards. I've got a it's 3L logo ball standard. There's just a lot of wonderful color from that time period. Ball Masons, ball 3L only, a lot of great amber colored jars. And this is the half gallon. It's just fun to collect these. I've only got a few though, because it's hard to get them. And another one I borrowed from Jeff Klingler. This one, remember I showed you the four-liner. Well, here's another one. And remember, we're in the early machine-made era. This is another ball improved Mason's patent 1858. And Jeff has a wonderful color run of these. And I knew that, and so I tapped on his shoulder to be able to show this example. The next major step in the timeline is when Ball acquired the rights to the Owens fully automatic glass blowing machine in 1909 with the purchase of the Greenfield Fruit Jar and Bottle Company. I used to work in Greenfield for a little while, so I have quite a few of those jars. Production numbers of fruit jars started skyrocketing once the fully automatic era started. This is also the point at which the Ball logo changed from the 3L to the 2L logo. And this is when the ubiquitous blue Ball Perfect Mason appeared on the scene. And that's how I got started with grandparents and great-grandparents, and found them and got involved, got interested. And then so now we're in the Owens machine era. There's just crazy tons of varieties of jars now. I'm going to just kind of highlight some things here at the kind of the later part of the timeline that's interesting to collectors. So another contract, we saw the Happer as a contract jar. Another one was the ABGA jar, Anglo-Belge Glass Blowers Association. This was a contract jar for that company, ABGA, in London, England. So it was an export jar. So these are a little hard to find, but if you have friends or look on eBay for people in England, they do show up. But what you don't see, and this is pretty rare, is the ones that say ABGA Mason Improved. Most of them that you find say Perfect here, Mason Perfect. And you'll notice on the Mason's Perfect ones, there's this nice like a rectangular plate on the jars. And that's where they replaced Improved with Perfect. So I think they were ramping up in the Owens machine era and everything was perfect, and they wanted to really advertise that. They took out a lot of advertisements during that time period saying they used the Owens machine. So I don't think the Improved lasts long. They thought Perfect was a better marketing tool than Improved. It's better to be perfect than improved. And there's one more variation of this jar that's tougher to find, and it wasn't made on the Owens machine. The script of APGA is different. It's a little fancier, different script, and it does say Mason Perfect. But it was made on what looks to be a Ball Bingham machine. And you can tell real easily by the wavy glass color and then the characteristics of the base of the jar. But these are really tough to find too. So we're still talking about some Owens machines, but really unusual ones. So we'll talk about the perfection jars. Most likely the first of the perfection jars were the ones that had the two dual patent dates on the front. And these are tough to find. So that's another reason you kind of think maybe they're harder, they're earlier. But this particular one has a complete original closure, and they're very tough to find. It's kind of got a lacquered screw band of a certain style. The inside mouth of this jar is beveled so that the glass top seal lid fits down inside the mouth. There's a kind of a diamond-shaped rubber ring. Still on the perfection theme, another North American Glass acquisition is a pint ball perfection, which they're out there. They're not common, but they're obtainable. But what's unusual about this one is it still has an original product label on it. And I've also got a milk glass lid on it that's appropriate for the jar. So these jars really did achieve perfection. They sealed too well for the average home canner. You had to chip away and really get that glass lid that fit down in the mouth to get it back out. So what they did at the end of the life, this only was 1 year. What they did at the end of the life of this jar was start handing them over to jobbers, different companies for groceries. Instead of home canners, market to companies that pack their product in them. I sure hope this video works. Another really unusual jar. You find a lot of odd things collecting ball jars. And it's just endless. For some reason, when they started making the square jars, it was kind of a space-saving thing. They made pints, but this is the only known pint for some reason. You can find square quarts and half gallons, but this is the only known pint so far. This was another North American Glass. But this was another Phil Robinson piece too. And I love, he's a good guy. Went to his museum many times, and he was quite an inspiration for me to get started, as some other people were. Another Owens machine. Remember, they're just cranking out jars. They're contracting to a lot of companies now. They're the #1 fruit jar manufacturer in the world at this point. Another contract was for maple syrup, a company, Towel, in Vermont. So these are tough to find, 22-ounce jars, but it's even tougher to find them with a label. There's some out there. That's what makes this one a fun one to share. Okay, so getting to the end of the Owens machine examples that I brought that era, these are the teens and 20s. We don't know why, but some of these contract jars for other companies like grocery stores. There was the Banner, the Sure Seal, the Amazon Swift Seal, and a whole bunch of others. But some of them turned up with an upside down slug plate on the jar. This should have been facing, the right side up so you could read what it says. But the way the mold was made, this circular plate was something that was interchangeable. They could put another company, some other type of embossing in there in the mold, and then have a minimal expense for the manufacturing. I meant to bring, there's several other ones, and I meant to bring those, but Jeff was kind to bring this one. I accidentally left the box at home before coming here, but I have other examples of these. And because this talk is about iconic ball jars, you can't really have a complete presentation without showing a solid pour. I don't have any solid pour ball jars. Those are so rare and so cool. But I did borrow Jeff's. So I'm gonna show that next. This is super heavy. You have to be really careful. It's solid glass. And it originally, so what happened was there's a mold for making this particular jar. But at the beginning of starting to use the machine to warm up the molds, they poured some glass in it to warm up the molds, hot glass. Because if you don't, then you get what's called a whittled effect. The glass isn't nice, uniform, and plain and smooth. It's wavy, and they didn't want that. So, or another way these can come about is just a glass worker decide they want a paperweight or a doorstop, and that really did happen, but extremely rare. And this is, I wanted to show an example, and this is Jeff's. Okay, just two more sets of jars to show, and we're on time. This is later in the machine era, but I wanted to include this example because it has a cool story behind it, and that's the other part of this presentation is jars that are iconic and have kind of a cool backstory. This one's a clear half-gallon Ball Ideal, but it says on the back, property of Southern Methodist Orphans Home, Waco, Texas. And some of you already know the story, but Ball made this for the orphans home, and the idea was the orphans home would give these jars out to people local to them in Waco, Texas. They would can food in it and bring it into the orphans home for them to use at the orphans home and feed the kids. Another story, and we're getting kind of down here to the end of this poster because it's 76, and the ones I'm going to show now are from that time period. Another story is the era of Ball commemorative and special run jars from the 1970s to the 1980s. This includes employee retirements, major events, and their 100-year anniversary in 1980. There's a lot of those. There's a special section in the Red Book just for those jars. In 1976, Ball decided, this is the U.S. bicentennial, 200-year anniversary. There's a lot of nostalgia, history. So Ball decided to represent a little bit of their own history. And this was a throwback to their original amber buffalo jar that they considered a cool representation of their early days. So it says on the bottom, an historic reproduction, Muncie, Indiana, 1976, amber buffalo. Now these jars were mouth blown also like the skilled glass blowers of the old days. So that's another cool thing about this story. But somehow, the glass blowers had a couple other glass batch colors available, and these were never officially produced or released in their catalog. The amber jar was actually in their catalog. They had a company catalog at the time, and there was a reproduction box end and some other things, those jars. But somebody at the factory, which is not an unusual story, decided to make them in these colors, this blue and this clear. And there's only one clear known and two blue known. And the person that found these was in our club, and he found them at a garage sale in Portland, Indiana, which is near the Dunkirk glass plant where these were produced. There are advantages of being in the town where the factory was and the employees were, because things kind of wandered out into homes in the surrounding area. So great finds still occasionally show up. Greg has a great jar in his auction coming up that attests to that on a whole new level. But wait, there's more. Ball, was a big company, over 100 years in the business and still going, but they had a plastics division, they had a metal container division, so a lot of the beverage cans, today they still make beer and soda and so on. You'll see a tiny little Ball logo. And the plastics division, in the late 70s, they made these acrylic Christmas ornaments, and there's 100 varieties of those, and those are fun to collect as well. So I'm just kind of pointing out that collecting Ball stuff can get to be addictive and go in crazy directions and keep you really busy. In closing, it may seem like we have covered a ton of material in this seminar. The reality is that we've only just minimally scratched the surface of this topic, both from a historical perspective and a collector's perspective. I'd like to mention that the essential reference books for a Ball collector, and what I drew on for the material in this presentation, are the Memoirs of Frank Clayton Ball, first published in 1937. And if you find one of these, they're almost all signed by him, and he's got this beautiful calligraphic handwriting. If you're looking for one, try to find the dust jackets, because sometimes it doesn't have it. But they also reproduced that available at Minnetrista in 2003, so you might find one of those copies. Oh, and there's tons of factory information that a collector would love in this book. It's not just like a personal family thing, it's factory-oriented, business-oriented. And we have the Collector's Guide to Ball Jars, authored by Bill Brantley, who was a Ball employee. This copy is actually signed by him. It was given to John Granda. Some of the people here may remember him. He was a collector back in the day in this club. But this is unusual because it's hardback, it's full of color photos of all these jars, and it has tons of history information about the actual different jar variations, like the ideal and the perfection, and so on, all of them. 1975, you can occasionally find those on eBay. And the other one, essential to a Ball collecting library, is Ball Corporation, the First Century. And they Ball themselves produced this one also in 1980, their 100-year anniversary. And this one reads like a storybook. It's a real easy to read book that takes you through the history, but not from a technical or manufacturing side, from the family and sort of general business aspects. And of course, I have to mention the research monographs and the book like Indiana Glass Factories, that Dick Roller produced. There's a ton of great stuff out there beyond those books. And there's a website, Ball Jar Collectors Community Center, on the Tapa Talk platform on the internet that ball collectors, specifically ball collectors, hang out on. And so I'd like to thank you for your time today. And I hope you have a great rest of the day at the 2026 Muncie Convention.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you. Oh, boy.
And you're welcome to come up here and look at these. I ask that if you do want to handle them, you be really careful on a few of them because I can't replace them.